Hello DSci 2000. In this video I will be giving you an example of advanced tidying of data. In your data files folder, please make sure that the 2020-03 beer.xlsx file has been saved in there. Let's go ahead and go back to your DSci 2000 folder and open up the R project file. And let's go ahead and create a new R script. Control S, unit 4, and let's just call this beer.r. Because this file is an XLSX file, we will read it in using readxl. So let's go ahead and load the readxl package. Control Enter, and let's just call this data frame beer. Read XLSX data files / 2020-03 beer.xlsx. And for reasons I won't get into again, we're just going to run as.data.frame on beer. Now we've run that code. Let's make sure it's loaded into R correctly. And yes, it appears that it has. Now let's open up this file in Excel. So what is in this data set? This is a statistical report of beer manufacturing from the Department of the Treasury. To start, one of the things I hope that you notice is that these data are clearly not tidy. There are many observations here, but they clearly don't have their own individual rows. For reporting purposes, someone might find this an easier way to read the numbers, but for purposes of working with for analysis, we're going to have to restructure these data. Let's first start thinking about what is in these data that we don't need. Well, we definitely don't need this header, and we definitely don't need anything that occurs after that table. So basically these rows that are selected here. Let's figure out where those corresponding rows are in R. So I have the data frame open right over here, and that would be rows 1 through 7 and 20 through 25. Let's go ahead and get rid of those rows. Beer is going to be beer minus 1 through 7 and 20 through 25. I should put a C right there. And then with the comma, because that's a row index, press Control Enter. Let's look at the beer data frame. So now this has been stripped to mostly its essentials. Let's go back to the Excel document. So now we have limited ourselves mainly to rows 9 and 20 here that we see in the Excel spreadsheet. Let's think about what uniquely identifies each value here. Let's start off with this 15,390,880. This is representing beer production in the current month. That on its own tells me that these three values should be in one row. And that applies for every value in this production row. So that's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to have some sort of production row and the type of month it is and a value. That's fine. Now let's look at this row, this particular value right here. What we're dealing with right here is taxable removals in bottles and cans. So in this situation, we actually have 4 values that could be in one row. The fact that it's in bottles and cans, it's taxable, and it's a removal. So we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. And we have a similar problem for kegs, that's taxable and removal. Tax determined premises used, it's also taxable and removal. And then in this situation, for this value, we're going to have for export, tax-free, and removals. So basically, what it looks like is we're going to have to somehow say that this one's production. This is taxable removals in bottles and cans, taxable removals in kegs, taxable removals that are tax determined that premises use. And we're also going to have to take into account that there are these total rows as well. Personally, for me, these totals could be easily calculated from the prior values. So I'm inclined to just toss those out, particularly these rows, so that I don't have to worry about them because I could easily calculate those from the currently existing values. So the next thing that's coming to mind is let's get rid of these total rows. And what are they in our data frame? So if I look for the total rows, now this is going to be a little tricky because R has not relabeled these row names yet. So to make our lives easier, I'm going to set our row names to null in beer. This is a common trick, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. I'm going to press Control Enter, and it has re-indexed our rows from 1 to the number of rows. Anyway, so if we look for the total rows in particular, we see that they're in rows 6, 10, and 11. So let's go ahead and remove those. And then a comma for the row index, press Control Enter, and we can see that those total rows have been removed. I'm going to do row names beer to null just to re-index the rows again. We're now at a point where I think we have the values that we need. It's just a matter of figuring out what our structure is going to be. So the production rows are relatively simple. This here is just production in the current month. However, for some of these other variables, they're going to be a little more complicated. For example, this is taxable removals in bottles and cans. So that suggests there that we probably need to do some string concatenation. I think what I'm going to do is, to make my life easier, I'm going to throw that long label into column 4 so that I don't have to worry about trying to grab things from multiple columns. To make my life easier there, what I'm going to do is this. These 6 rows, including the NAs, are all removals. These 3 rows are taxable, and these 3 rows are tax-free, even though there are NAs surrounding them. So I need to fill those NAs. I'm going to start off with row 2. So we want to fill rows 3 through 8 with removals in the second column. So how you can do that is just this. For I in, we're starting at row 3 to the number of rows. First, we're going to manipulate the second column. We're going to implement a similar strategy to what we did with the livestock data set, which was to get a current value out. We need to fill both columns 2 and 3. So I'll just call this current value 2. And that will be beer in the second column in the ith row. And we'll also have a current value 3. Which is going to be beer in the ith row in the third column. Then we'll just do something like the if statement like we did with the livestock data. If current value 2 in the second column is not NA, then we're going to set our label to just the current value. Otherwise, set the value of the beer data frame in the second column in the ith row to whatever the label is. And we'll just copy and paste this and do something similar for the third column. And I'll probably call this label 2 and label 3 just to be consistent. And if I run this loop and just put my cursor there, I see that it's giving me no errors. Let's look at the beer data frame. And that's exactly what I want, which is for all 6 of these rows to be removals here, these 3 to be taxable, and these 3 to be tax-free. Now, I want to just throw the entire label in the 4th column. So this should be taxable removals in bottles and cans, for example. I need to concatenate those 3 columns of strings in the following order: 3rd column, 2nd column, and 4th column. For those particular rows, from 3 to n row beer, I'm going to set the 4th column and the ith row to be equal to the concatenation of, I'll just use paste, the 3rd column, 2nd column, and 4th column. So that will be I, 3, I, 2, and I, 4. In addition to this, I don't want this to happen all the way until the end. I only want it to happen from rows 3 through 8. So I will just change this n row beer to 8. And let's press Control Enter. And that's pretty much what I want. So we can keep ourselves to just this small segment of the table. This value is identified by the fact that it is taxable removals in bottles and cans in the current month, and our identifiers are just going to be either in the 4th column or the 1st row, which is great. So what we end up having here is a 3-column table. one with whatever's in the fourth column, one with whatever's in the first column up here, and one with the value. So let's go ahead and build our data frame. Before I do that, let's just get rid of anything we don't need in our variables. We don't need any of these 5 variables right here. So I'm just going to RM all of those. And press Control Enter. And then let's create our blank placeholder data frame, which is going to consist of, how would I describe this? I guess I will describe that as a statistic. And that'll be a character. And then we'll have a month, that'll be a character. And then we'll have a value, which will be numeric. Put cursor there, press Control Enter. Then we will want to loop from columns 4 to the end. And we will want to loop from rows through the end. Because those are where our values are. Then our row is going to consist first of the statistic, which is always in the fourth column in the corresponding row. So that's going to be beer, fourth column, corresponding row. The month, which is always in the first row of the corresponding column. So that's going to be beer, first row, corresponding column, and then the value, beer ij. We're going to give each row a consistent name. And then do an rbind. And let's go ahead and put our cursor there and run this loop. If I scroll down, looks like it did something wrong. Oh, names should be names. There we go. I'm going to put my cursor there and run Control Enter. I'm at the loop now. Control Enter. I'm good. Let's look at df. And this appears to be mostly what I want. Although I think... And this appears to be mostly what I want, except I seem to have some extra stuff up here. And I think I know what caused it. It was because I started on the 4th row. That should have been the 5th. And let's reset this data frame again. Put the cursor there, press Control Enter again, go to df, and that's exactly what I want. Numbers on one column, and then the labels on the other 2 variables. First of all, I'm not happy with these column names, so let's just give them better column names. So column names, df is going to be statistic, month, and value. Press Control Enter. One of the things I'm noticing about the value column is that these numbers are left justified. So that indicates to me that they're probably characters and not numeric. So let's convert those to numeric. df value with the $ is going to be as.numeric df $value. Press Control Enter. And if I look at df over here, it tells me that they're numeric, which means I'm good. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my variables over here and think about the things that I don't need. I don't need the beer data frame anymore, so I'm going to RM that. I also don't need I, J, or a row anymore. And I'm going to press Control Enter. And let's save this code. Let's just close everything else. Let's make sure our code works. Go to Session, Restart R. Go to this brush on the right, click Yes. Then select All using Control A and then Control Enter to run. Scroll down. I'm not going to worry about that error. That's a fine error for this situation. Look to the right. Let's look at df. And this appears to be exactly what we want. So we are good. Now, let's go ahead and commit our hard work. Go to your DSci 2000 folder. Right click. Click Git Bash here. Just type in git status just to make sure that it's tracking beer.r. It's not. Notice that it's under untracked files. First, let's cd to unit 4, git add beer.r, and then do a git commit on it. And then do a git push. Let's close git bash. Let's close RStudio. We don't want to save our workspace image. And we're done.